Okay, so it is a busy week on the earnings front. We're going to hear from a lot of companies in the United States. We've already heard from a few, and we've got a very busy calendar on deck for the Canadian market. Now, both the U.S. and Canadian stock markets have been trading around all-time highs. Our next guest is watching the profit story and some of the big macro themes these days. Melissa Brown is Managing Director of Investment Decision Research at SimCorp. Melissa, great to have you with us. Let's start with the earnings story. How important do you think it is at this time of all-time highs for stocks?
Well, I think stocks have to be supported by earnings to continue to go up. So I think it is extremely important. It's been interesting. Earnings have been coming in better than expected, but there seems to be a wide disparity. You've got kind of technology and everything else. And, a lot of the strength, the highest growth has been in the technology sector.
Yeah. And so I guess what would be the thing that you would be looking for in these earnings reports? I mean, I've been covering these earnings reports for 25 years. They're really just a snapshot of what's happening at any moment in time. But as someone who's trying to figure out investment decision making, what are the kinds of things you're looking for as we continue to roll through earnings season?
You're right. They are a snapshot, but they're a snapshot of what's already happened. So, and I think in a time when we have so much turmoil and uncertainty that's been generated by tariffs, by higher interest rates, by impending decisions by the Fed, and so on, I think that the key thing to look at is what management say about the future, what they're expecting for the rest of this year, excuse me, and perhaps next year, as opposed to what's already happened. Because, I think particularly with the impact of tariffs, you want to see if they are expecting that, they're going to see lower revenues or higher costs. And that's going to really be what's going to either help the market to continue to go higher or perhaps pause.
I am generalizing a little bit here, but I'm going to quote the team of number crunchers at Bloomberg Intelligence, who, as they were looking through the earnings picture so far, they noticed that there seems to be a trend where, outside of companies that beat expectations, those companies, if there are companies that miss expectations, that on average they're getting hit pretty hard. If that is the case, does it surprise you, just given where the markets are right now?
That doesn't surprise me at all. I think that companies that miss expectations, or the so-called negative earnings surprises, have, throughout, history, or for a long time, have gotten hit. I think it's a particularly big contrast right now when you do have a lot of companies that are beating expectations. So it makes it, in a way, even worse for the companies that can't manage to beat expectations if everybody else can.
Okay. And then, I think, you try to look for some signs of how the individual company story feeds into the larger uncertainty story. I think that you've got overall kind of a mixed story on what the margins look like for businesses in the face of the trade war. How are you thinking about the trade war right now, whether it's, how it's impacting companies or not impacting companies, or how even the market is thinking about it at this point?
Well, I think the trade wars they're impacting CEO action. We're seeing very high CEO uncertainty, which means that they're not sure what to do about investing in new projects or hiring. And so I think that actually is one of the very big impacts, because I don't think we've seen the full impact of tariffs yet on the actual earnings. It's really on expectations and how tariffs could hurt companies. I don't see tariffs helping too many companies, but so I think that is one of the key issues. I've got to say, it's kind of nice to have earnings reports coming this week, so maybe tariffs are not front and center in the news. They're, still there, but not all anybody is talking about. but still, I think we know that there is a potential impact. There's an August 1st deadline. That's very soon. And, the government is saying, the U.S. government is saying that that's it. They're going to impose tariffs. So I think investors have been behaving as if maybe the 10% that we've talked about is the cap. And that, we can probably deal with 10% tariffs. The question is, are there going to be selective tariffs on various industries or various countries? And I think that still remains to be seen. I mean, in other words, I think investors are being quite optimistic about the outcome, but it's not clear that the outcome that they're expecting is what they're going to get.
Well, and I want to tie it at all to the currency market, just because we're kind of looking for some investor cues right now. And to your point about the trade story, obviously in Canada, officials are pretty much putting out the message that the likely scenario for Canada in all of this would be some kind of deal that does not leave out tariffs of some kind, and the Commerce Secretary seemed to be alluding to that on television yesterday. But that's one currency story. I guess the other is Fed independence. Like, we can't get away from this story of not only what's going to happen with interest rates in the U.S., but what's going to happen with the current Fed chair, Jay Powell, and these lingering tensions between him and Donald Trump. How do you make sense of that as a market participant right now?
Well, making sense is tough. I think we saw when there was the rumor last week that Trump was going to fire Powell. We saw a big drop in markets across equities, fixed income, currency. There was a big reaction. It was brief. If you blinked, you might have missed it, but there was a reaction there. And, I think that suggests that investors are very concerned, and rightfully so, about the potential loss of independence of the Fed. And so, I think we don't know what the outcome is going to be, but we do know that we'll know probably around September, at least who is being slated to replace him.
Okay.